So I'm returning back to the painting. I've actually left it a few days, which is a really good way to approach it again. Sometimes a fresh eye is really good. Get your mind out of the process of it, and then when you come back you will see, like we talked before, the magic, the illusion we're creating. So we're just going to jump right back in and keep going, and I'll just talk about my thought process as we go. I'm going to use my small flat again. That's this guy right here. We're kind of working smaller passages, so I'm going to use the smaller brush. So I just need to take a minute and look at the bowl, the subject itself, and see what I think looks like it on my painting and what I need to change. It helps a lot if you squint and look at your subject. It helps simplify what you're looking at, and you can see lights and darks a little more easily. So I need to brighten this side a little bit, and it's not going to mix with what's there because what's there is dry. It's been a few days, so I'm going to won't have that advantage of the wet paint already being ready. We're just going to be painting over what we have. So I've got white, and I'm adding a little bit of the brown to it, or sienna, because right now it looks kind of samey all the way across, so I want to bring out the lighter side a little bit, and it slips up in here a little bit, slips up in here, squinting all the time, looking at what I've done and where I want to go from here. I want to brighten this up a little bit back here. Okay. So it's great to have some part of the painting established, because then you can come back and accentuate what you've already done and continue to bring it out. Need to brighten this up a little bit. It's blending in with what's behind it a little too much. That's better, I think. With the canvas being dry, we can get away with just rubbing it out a little bit. So as I look, I can see the foot is catching quite a bit of light. So I'm going to add a good amount of white as I proceed with the foot of this cute little candy dish. Just kind of establishing the basic tone, and then we'll push and pull it lights and darks from there. It's going to get a little darker. The light's striking it right here, so as it travels toward the side, I want it to get a little darker. Starting to describe these ruffles a little bit. There's a body shadow here cast from the bowl of the candy dish. And it's darker than that. I squint and it helps me see in relation to what I already have how dark this is. a little darker. And the cast shadow here is darker than the body shadow above it. So we want to make sure this is that way too. And we'll put some more reflection in here to continue to heighten that contrast. Just want to clean up this line a little bit so it falls kind of in a straight line because the shape is smooth. I want to keep describing these ruffles. It's a little too dark. Oops. We'll just do the shadow side then. Can't seem to get it light enough, so we'll just use that to our advantage. And the thing that really makes glazed objects pop is having it be the highlight. The highlight is what makes glass and highly glazed objects really show off. Now before I put the body reflection on there, I want to darken up the background behind it because that's pretty dark, and that will automatically make it look lighter. And I'm letting it slide into the body to create that lost line to keep it from looking cut out and pasted. The cast shadow even has some echoing of that ruffle. We want these to be indistinct, so we'll just use our blender brush to soften it a little bit. Put a little over here just for, there's a bit of shadow falling on that side. It'll also just surround our subject nicely. Okay. We will look at the rest of that a little later. right now. We just want to keep bringing it out. So I want to bring out a little more variation here. So I kind of established those shadows. Now I'm just easing them in a little bit, reiterating the peaks of these ruffles. So I think we'll go ahead and put the cast shadow underneath because that will help us continue to explain the shape. So I'm going to go in with the straight burnt sienna. And I'm using the corner of my brush right over here to carve that little spot in. And then even though it's too long here, we will cut it off with some table color in a minute. I don't want to worry about what's going on down here. I just want to worry about what's going on up here. Every stroke, we're kind of building up to getting that likeness. Every stroke should help lend itself to creating the likeness more all the time. I think this front scallop could be a little longer, so we're going to make it a little longer. Okay, I think we're going to paint in some table, get our large flat brush here, and we will paint in the table a little bit. Because if we jump in with the table, then we can, I kind of like my ruffles at the bottom, but I need to look at something else for a minute, and then I will revisit it and see if it's where I want it to be. It's a little too dark. Light striking this table, so we want it to be. This is our chance to cut off our cast shadows. So we want the table to be lighter, darker than the bowl. even though it's just a tonal study, we can judge that the bowl is the lightest thing in the picture. So you can come in here and just trim off these shadows. We'll let the edge of the canvas be a little darker to push our viewer's eye up to the subject. Adding a little more white. I'm just going to soften this cast shadow a little bit. It's a light striking over here. Just want to make it look like it all matches. So, let's see. Put a little more lightness here, just a little around the subject. And so, let's go ahead and put our spoon in. I'm going to use my small flat again. And he's darker than the table. So we'll just start sketching him in. He sits right here, right close to the subject. And the bowl has some light striking in here, the bowl of the spoon. And the side is darker. It's got some carving happening here. I'm just going to try to suggest it. Some roundness here, some more carving, and a little top knot. So it's just a lot of suggested shapes. You'll have a cast shadow too that'll set him down. Right now he's floating. So we will put some real dark darks underneath him. That will also give us a chance to kind of trim down his shape if we need to. Cast shadow leaves where he's laying a little bit comes out a little further. Just want it to look separate, so I'm going to restate a little bit of it. Little reflection in here to continue to separate it from the shadow. Now it looks kind of a little bit too distinct, so I'm going to use my blender brush to soften that cast shadow a little bit. I'm gonna use a little lighter color to trim it off here for the table. Use my small round brush to refine the bowl here a little bit. There's a little bit of light striking here. So I think I'll make the edge of this a little darker against that light, so it makes a little more sense, hopefully. Just the study of light and dark really helps you see how to define things separated out from each other. Okay, I think that spoon's all right. Okay, so I stepped away a moment. I'm going to get some dark color and lift. I think this is too short in relation to this. I mean, I could leave it, but I think I will lift it a little bit. So I made that a little shorter. I'm going to use a little background to trim it up. Standing away helped me to see that it was a little bit too long. I prefer it this way. Just spread it out. When you make a change, just spread it out and make it look like you meant to. I want this edge to be a little softer. So I'm going to make this cast shadow, remake it a little bit here. Lift this up a little bit. It's all about looking at what you've done and adjusting it to what you're seeing. What you're seeing is your guide. Like we said, we don't want it to be a dictator, but if we enjoy the likeness, it's fun to try to get closer. But if you feel like you are happy with it and you don't want to keep chasing that likeness, color quits and hide the bowl, because you can do that too. You can definitely do that. Nobody will know if you don't show them the bowl. They won't know what it looks like. Okay. Oh, I think we're sneaking up on it here. Yeah, I think we're getting somewhere. Just about fine tuning. Lots of fine tuning. So I think that was a little too dark. I'm going to rinse out my brush and get some more white. Okay, need to brighten this up here. In a minute here, we'll start putting on the highlights, and then it'll really start singing. So I think we want to brighten this side a little bit more. Just some straight white. Keep bringing it out. Okay, so let's take a quick look and see overall what we think. I'm going to add a little bit of darker color to line this edge here. Make it stand out a little bit more. I can see like the turning edge is darker. I think I'll use my small brush for that, this little bitty guy. Just sneak in there and draw some turning edges that I see. And it helps separate it out from what's behind it. Just kind of organizing things here, making them have their own little shape. Lighten this up just a little bit. See a little more shadow in through here. Cast from this little scallop. A little bit of reflection under here, lightening this up a little bit. Definitely a reflection over here, so I'm going to throw a little more white on my brush and squint, take a look and see. I think we're getting there. Let's get some washer brush out. Let's think about putting some bright highlights on. So I'm using my small brush right now, this little guy right here. And we're going to put some small highlights on. See if they'll show up here. Sometimes when you load your brush, you got to draw your paint out and then scoop it up. Like just scoop up a little bit on the end to make it stick. So that is so light, it's not really showing up. So I'm going to go ahead and put some highlights here where I see them. A real bright one here. I want this to be pure white because it's fighting all the paint that's on there. On the bottom it's fresh paint. So like the highlight lives on the apex of the concavity and convexity in line with the light. And since this is highly, oops, too much paint, highly glazed, there's going to be a little highlight on each of the bumps here. And then one here at the neck. Let me soften that a little bit, it's a little too abrupt. Come in here. There's one right here in the neck. One right here in this valley. One right here on the edge. One right here. One here. Reloading each time, especially when we're putting it on the spots where there's one here too, where the paint is wet. Now we'll just come in here and pull out the edges a little bit to ease it in. We don't want to go through the middle of it because then we'll lose our shine. So we just want to come around the edges a little bit just to make it look like it lives on the pottery. Okay, we're going to put a bigger one back here. Got to rinse out my brush because it's kind of dirty, so we'll rinse it out and get just white. There's a big old glob here. We want to make our highlight bigger than we see it so it can withstand the blending in or easing in. So that's the basic idea. We're pretty much there, but I think I might tinker a little bit more. But, you know, that's what they say separates the professionals from the amateurs, knowing when to stop. And that's not always easy because it's hard to be happy with what you do when you're nose deep in the process. And, you know, it's hard to meet perfection, especially when it's sitting right there. It's hard to mimic that. So I may tinker a little bit more, but I hope this monochrome has been interesting to you. It's a great way to focus on your brush skills, drawing with your brush. It's a great way to train your eye to see the nuances between the lights and the darks, and to see that, you know, it's not just color that separates things, it's the tonality of lights and darks and the interplay of that. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you try it. So beyond that, join me next time. Not sure what we'll get into, but we'll explore it together. And truly, you are a masterpiece. There really is no one like you, and I am so glad we're friends.